This is teaching standard 5, adapt teaching to respond to student strengths and needs of the pupil. Starting off with a mental meeting sheet, we discussed differentiation and demonstrations throughout different lessons, and we spoke about how I've done that and how I will continue to do that over the coming weeks. Taking a lesson plan that I created, there was differentiation quite quickly from the start, as there was a range of abilities. The groups of 3 that they were in were all very, very similar in ability, which made it easier to differentiate by group rather than individual. The more able started getting into game realistics, trying to move each other about the back of the court and making sure that they're going to try and win the point rather than just try and get the shuttle over the net. The less able were allowed to have 2 hits, so they could control the shuttle before hitting it over. This emphasised more technique rather than winning the point, and correct technique was advised, getting side on, etc. Having the 2 shots allowed them to hit it up to themselves before setting themselves for the over clear. Moving on to the drop shots, this again was similar. However, if it was too easy for some, instead of hitting it straight over the net into the service zone, they had to try and hit a cone, which made the target area smaller and made them think about the shot that they was going to play. The less able, the net was lowered, which meant that there was more success rate. Even if the drop shot wasn't perfect or was going to drop short, it would go over, and more technique was involved rather than worrying about the placement of the shot. The games differ by ability, so the more abled had to score points in the tram lines, which means they had to think about where they were going to place their shot. There was also a splat placed at the back of the court, which meant that the opposition would try and make them step on the splat in order to lose the point. This worked well as students began to think about game realistic situations and moving each other about the court. Less abled, however, were able to hit the shuttle over the net and score a point every time they get it over the net, so they're focusing more on technique and getting the shuttle over the net rather than having to worry about where they're going to place it, etc. Going through to consolidation, students demonstrated where they were, so differences at different points. So the less able students and more able students were able to show progression throughout, even though they was at different stages, they could both be challenged. So looking at feedback that I given, it showed that I was always checking technique and making sure that if their technique was good and they were able to get it into the correct areas, they'd be pushed on further at a quicker rate. Shows that differentiation was shown between more able and less able, and there was a big difference between each. However, they were both catered for their individual needs. Talking about progress, for both, what the impact on pupil progress was. So they would progress at different rates. However, they were both making progress in the same skill. They could progress at different rates and have different outcomes. They'd be able to work on technique rather than worrying about the shot, so they were able to make sure that they had the right technique to get the shuttle over the net rather than aiming for a specific space. The more able were challenged more, so it was more game realistic, and they were able to try and move each other about the court more rather than worrying about just hitting the shuttle over. They had to aim for specific spaces and make the opponent work. Johnson and Grabowski 2012 showed that adapting to learners' needs can promote the most efficient learning. This is evident here as the differentiations and demonstrations that took place helped to progress pupil progress.